Good afternoon, and welcome to another segment of Cooking with Emma. It is Christmas Day 2020, and I am preparing a three-course meal. And the first part of the meal that I'm preparing is my famous Marsala mushroom sauce. So, as you can see, I have everything prepared here. I have my clarified butter, which was previously made. I have my mushrooms. I have my beef broth, my Marsala wine, my onion, and my garlic. So let's get going so we can get the ball in the road and get my mushroom sauce going and the other part of my course for my meal. All right, let me get started. So I'm just shoving out my garlic pieces. I'm going to put that aside. And now I am going to go ahead and start cutting up my mushrooms. And these mushrooms here they call the baby bellas. See, so you got to make sure that they're washed thoroughly after I cut them up. Make sure it's all in. Okay, you can see how muddy and dusty it is. So let's go ahead and wash these out, and then we're going to go ahead and start cutting them up. All right, my baby bella mushrooms is all washed and soaking in water. So let's go ahead and start cutting them up so we can get my Marsala sauce on the way. All right, so basically just gonna take the cap off. I'm just gonna you can already purchase the Bella's mushrooms already cut up, but I like to cut them up myself, Now my mushrooms is to die for. You can eat this on gravy, on your meat, on rice, or eat it with just anything. You will taste for vegetarians. It will taste like you think you're eating meat. How nice, flavorful I make it. But you're gonna see once it's done, and the smell, OMG, it is to die for. So just got a few more to go. Then I'm gonna go ahead and cut up my onions and my garlic, and we're gonna saute everything first. Once it's all sauteed, we're gonna go ahead and add our beef broth. And once our beef broth is simmered down for about 3 to 4 minutes, we add our Marsala wine. And we let the Marsala wine boil down to about a third of it. Then we go ahead and add our salt and black pepper. You can either use black pepper or you can use the white pepper. Either one. And as far as salt content goes, I like to use the Mediterranean salt. It is very good. It's much more flavorful than the iodized salt. So that's what I use. So as you can see, I'm almost finished here. All right, so we are finished chopping up our mushrooms, our bella mushrooms. So now I say I soak it back in the water. We don't need the stems. We're not using the stems today. Let's get our stove on. So let that heat. So while that's heating up, I'm going to go ahead and cut up our onions and our garlic. Alright, so let's finish up with our garlic. That's an easy way of getting the skin off, just by punging on it. And our onions, we're going to use small dice of our onions. So I'm just going to go ahead and do about 3 thin 1/8 of an inch in our onions. And just take the outer skin off because we don't cook with all the skin. Alright, so we're going to do small dices. Very small dice. And we are going to do the same thing with our garlic, or small dice. Gotta be very careful when using any type of utensils. Practice safety. Try to not have young children around when you have working with your stove and sharp objects. Safety is the most important thing. All right. So in the meanwhile, let's go ahead and get our clarified butter into our pan. Now, for those of you who don't know what clarified butter is melted butter that was separated from the fats from the liquid. And we dispose of the liquid, and the only thing that we have now is the fats. So it does not burn. All right, so let's go ahead, and we're going to go ahead and put our onions in, and we're going to cook it until it's transparent. And now for our garlic. And all I'm using is 2 cloves of the garlic. Same thing. Small dices. And the aroma is breathtaking. And I hope everyone is enjoying their Christmas. And I hope that Santa brought you everything that you desire. All right, so let's go ahead and just turn this and make sure it's become transparent. Then we're going to add our garlic and then our mushroom. So we can make sure that everything is well sauteed. That's the main focus, is everything is sauteed well. Let's turn the stove up some because I turned it down. Okay. I'm using a rubber spatula. This is heat resistant, so it can withstand the heat of the gas stove. So not all of them can withstand it. So you have to make sure when you purchase them, if you decide to do the same, you have to make sure that it can withstand it. Some of them would actually melt. So this is the one that I purchased that can withstand the heat. All right, so now for our garlic. Okay, great. And you can already smell it. You can already. With the onion and the garlic combination, the freshness, the aroma. And for those of you who are now joining in, what I'm cooking Marsala, my famous Marsala mushroom sauce. And so far I have my diced onion and garlic sauteing in clarified butter. All right, so as you can see, we're starting to become transparent. Now I'm going to go ahead and get our mushroom and start adding our mushroom. So I had my mushroom soaking in water. Just to maintain the moisture by being in the water and not get dried out. Now be careful when you're cooking mushrooms. You just don't want to go to your yard and if you see mushroom, you pick them and eat it. Not all mushrooms are consumable. Some of them are very poisonous, so you want to buy it from an authorized vendor, such as your local vegetable stand or supermarket. Me, I normally get my mushrooms either from the farmer's market or Walmart or our local HEB, which is a grocery store here in Texas. All right, so now we're going to let this saute about for 5 to 6 minutes before adding our liquid. I'm going to turn it a little now. So you're basically incorporating the onion and the garlic into your mushrooms while it's being sauteed. Okay, let it sit. Now, as I said before, this mushroom sauce, Marsala mushroom sauce, when you're using the Marsala wine, is very, very strong. It's a dry wine. So you do not want to use a lot of it. But I'll give you our measurements. For this amount of mushroom sauce that I'm cooking, I'm going to use a tablespoon and a half of the Marsala wine. I do not want it too strong because Marsala wine is a very strong dry wine. All right, let it sit again. In the meanwhile, while that's been simmering, I have 1 teaspoon and a half of cornstarch, and I'm going to mix this with water so to add to our sauce. Just going to mix it gradually, and it's going to be added to thicken our sauce. And we're just going to put this to sit, and right now I'm just make sure that everything is dissolved. Okay, so it's dissolved. All right, let's go ahead and turn our mushrooms now. Can you believe how quickly this year went by? It's Christmas Day already. In less than a week from today, we will be into a new year, 2022. The last couple of years has been so dramatic. I think our country, the whole entire world, has been to a standstill with this COVID-19. I know, because I have several family members that have it and still have it, and I pray for them and all the others, people out there with it. This is a treacherous disease. I'm already vaccinated. I am not promoting any vaccination, but for me, I am vaccinated because I am not going to take the risk of harming anyone, catching it and turning it over to anyone. I know even though I'm vaccinated, I can still catch the disease, but it wouldn't be as treacherous without being unvaccinated. But needless to say, I am not promoting it. All I'm promoting right now is my cooking and to give you ideas of how you can have a very healthy, tasteful gourmet dinner that you can purchase in a restaurant. You can cook this at home yourself. That's what I'm here to do. So I am teaching you, giving you my little secret recipes that I've made up myself. So if you see how nice and simmering it is. So now that it has simmered, I'm going to go ahead and start adding my liquid. Now for those of you who do not eat any meat, you can just use water as your liquid. For me, I chose to use beef broth. So if you chose to use water, you can use chicken cube or beef cube or even the salt as an intake to season your mushroom. All right. This is my beef broth, and I'm going to bring this to a boil. This is 3/4 of a box, and this box is 32 ounces, which is equivalent to 2 pounds, and I use 3/4 of it. It does have some flavor, and if you choose to use beef broth, you can make it yourself. Basically what you do, you can get your beef bones from your butcher shop, and you can make your own broth. I sometimes do that with my chicken broth. Alright, so we're going to let this simmer and then go on to the next portion. Finish mise en place in our rest of our recipe. So as you can see how our mushroom sauce, is beginning to boil. Now we're going to go ahead and add our Marsala wine. So I have this measurement spoon is 2 tablespoons. So we're going to add our wine now. So 2 tablespoons. Now I want to make it 3. So 3 tablespoons. And we are going to let that boil simmer down. Okay, so now it's going to simmer. So once it starts simmering down, then we're going to go ahead and add our cornstarch for 3 minutes, and then we're going to go ahead and add our white pepper or black pepper, whichever you choose, and then your salt, my salt. So you can see our sauce is boiling down. So now we're going to go ahead and add our cornstarch. So just stir it up to make sure. Settle by sitting there. Just want to stir it to make sure, that there's no lumps or anything in it. Good. Just going to add a little bit more water just to get rid of the little residue on our bowl. Alright, so good. So we're going to do with a constant stir. Because this now, with the cornstarch, is going to thicken our liquid. Now some people use flour, but I choose to use cornstarch. So you can see our sauce is getting thicker. Get about 4 more minutes, and then we're going to add, or we can taste it first before adding our salt content. And the reason why we're going to do that is because remember, our broth had some type of salt content, but the amount that we put, we want to make sure that it has enough sodium to taste. Look at this thick, how thick it is now. Look at this. Very, very thick. It's about that time. All right. So we're gonna go ahead and do a quarter of a teaspoon in my kosher salt. Let's make sure it's about a quarter. I could use a little bit more. Fantastic. So we're gonna add it. Now remember, it's going to take a little longer to melt because the salt is coarse. It's not as fine as the regular salt. At this point, you want to turn your stove down to low. Basically just at a simmering point, and your sauce is already completed. Then test it now. Let's make sure that all the coarse of the salt has dissolved. I love my Marsala sauce. The kids love it, and you will too once you try it. So as you see, the recipe for the Marsala sauce is our mushrooms, garlic, fresh onion, coarse salt, cornstarch, water, chicken broth or beef broth or plain water, and our fine dry Marsala wine. We first, as you notice, saute and we use clarified butter. You can choose to use olive oil if you like, but I choose to use clarified butter for my preacher. You saute your garlic and onion first, then you saute your mushrooms, and once all blended together, once the onions and the garlic are got a transparent, meaning a clear look, then you start adding your other ingredients. So you add, after they get that transparent look, you add your mushroom, saute that. Once it starts turning to a brownish color, you go ahead and add your liquids and let that simmer for 3 to 4 minutes. Then you add your wine. And you try to estimate that the wine burned down, simmer down to 1/3 of the volume that you added. Once that is done, then you add your cornstarch or flour, whichever one you choose to use. Once that simmer and start getting thickened, then you add your salt or your cube, which whenever you desire to use. So as you can see, our sauce is done here, and we are going to do a taste test to make sure that we have enough sodium. Now remember, you're adding sodium, but you're going to add this product to other products to combine it. So you want to make sure that you do not have too much salt. You do not want the salt to overpower your food. All right, see how, look how thick this is. See, nice and thick. All right, taste this. Magnifique, perfect. As I say, for vegetarians, you could delete the broth and use plain water. But if you're eating this by itself with rice or gravy, with mashed potatoes or vegetables, you would think you're eating meat once you finish with this meal. So as you can see, our masala mushrooms is done and ready to be served or whatever. Thank you for joining Emma in another segment of Cooking with Emma. This is mushroom Marsala, my famous Marsala mushroom sauce. See you next time. Bon appetit.